about that. There's some very intricate spots here between these two that could come up. Is Edmund going to put some of his rabbits in jeopardy in some of the spots, and how much Scott might deviate from whatever plan that he had to make sure that he gets to remove the rabbits from play so they don't get bounced over and over again. Because as the game goes long, if you can contain those rabbits, maybe you might have a little bit of a better shot, because Edmund might not find as many of his tech cards for this matchup. The problem is Edmund's running a 4 of a lot of these cards that are teched into this matchup. And we'll have to see if Scott's up for it. Edmund definitely the favorite here in this matchup, but like you said, could be anyone's game here. It could
go anyway. With that being said, let's get on over to the feature table and start the Best of 5, the finals of the Disney Lorcana North American Championship.
We got a nice little crowd watching it out here too. I can see them from where I'm sitting. They are all in rapture here, waiting to see who's going to take home this trophy.
This is a moment that a lot of us have been waiting for if you're a fan of Disney Lorcana, especially in the competitive space. Scott, of course, being the 2nd seed, Ed being the 5th, is going to be able to go on the play. We're going to take a look at their altars. Scott sending back 5, only keeping 2.
And I love that you just said that, too, because that's another thing we didn't talk about. This is a culmination of a long year for a lot of these guys that have put in a lot of time and effort. Edmund playing a lot of events, Scott playing a lot of events, putting in a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to this moment. And this is what we play for.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
You know?
I mean, both of these players have gone to multiple DLCs, and they haven't always been super successful. You know, like Edmund won Dallas-Fort Worth, was 20th in Chicago, but he's been to more DLCs than that. Same thing with Scott, was top 15 in Vegas. You know, it takes a lot to get to this point. It takes a lot of hard work, takes many late nights of practice, and it's all coming down to this moment.
Yeah, I mean, we forget the human side of this a lot, right? There's sacrifices made on both sides for these people. You know, you have to give up time with your family, time at work, things like that to really put into this, but these guys have devoted some of their life to these TCGs, and here they are kind of getting to that mountaintop. So why don't you kick us off here?
So with that being said, we're going to start with Scott inking a Pirate's Life, not finding a 1-drop popsicle. I think we do have the 2 ink ramp, but I don't think we have the 2 ink Queen of Hearts to follow up on Ed being on the play, and it passes over to Edmund.
Yeah, and he said that there's no popsicle on turn 1, but very importantly, it looks like there is going to be that ramp on turn 2. If he can't keep up in card quality and quantity with Edmund, maybe he can start playing some more impressive cards, maybe start getting some of those 7, 8, and 9 drops in before Edmund gets to his 5th.
Super important to get to those late cards that help you stabilize in the mid to late game. Edmund, of course, playing out the Diablo, Obedient Raven. We're going to see that Sail of the Azurite Seas. It passes back to Scott. He's going to ink a Visions of the Future, but with the Sail of the Azurite Sea, he gets to draw a card, and he gets to ink another card for turn. Going to go with that Maleficent Dragon. Doesn't have anything to follow it up with as we pass back to Edmund.
Yeah, a lot of the big expensive cards, and one of the cards that could be pretty impactful here is a Hiram for Scott here. No items just yet, though.
We do see the Flynn Rider come into play, though. This could be huge for Edmund here if we have the Sisu to follow up with it, especially since Scott hasn't been able to find any characters to challenge this Flynn and its strength.
Yeah, and that's actually a really good point here. Flynn Rider, a card that had kind of fallen not completely out of favor, but we've seen people shaving down to like 3 and 2 in some of their lists. Edmund playing a full amount of them, playing a ton of them here this weekend, and they have been doing wonders for him here, especially in this match in particular. This is one of the nightmare cards for Scott because he doesn't have a way to interact with this just yet and no way to challenge on its power, like you said. So this is going to be some free lore. I apologize. There is a brawl there. I thought that was a different card.
For it, but a card that Scott really needed for a scenario just like this. If Ed was able to follow this Flynn Rider up with a Sisu, which he does have in hand, we're going to see him play the Emboldened Warrior here. It does look, you know, it would have been difficult for Scott to come back from this. Edmund could have potentially gained 3 lore per turn due to that Flynn. So Brawl, very important card in this matchup as we come over to Scott.
No item picked up just yet either for Scott. So you see that he's got that Hiram in his hand, but it's kind of just stranded there. You don't want to get 0 value off this card when you play it. And a big thing that happens in this matchup is you ever get to quest with the Hiram, that's actually starting to pull you a little far ahead as well.
Yeah, we do see the Visions of Future being played. 5 cards off the top, 1 in hand. I did see a Popsicle in that 5. Interested to see what we picked up. It was the Popsicle, so we can utilize this Hiram on the next turn.
Yeah, I love this from Scott picking up Popsicle here. A lot of more expensive, maybe more powerful cards in those 5, but he understands the contexture of his hand. This Hiram here is going to be very important in this game. He's going to need to get a couple of extra cards to keep up with Edmund as this game goes on. Also, he wants to find a couple more inkables as well. You see a couple of the big drops late in his hand that aren't inkable. You don't want to get rid of this Visions if you don't have to just yet, because it'll help you find more things like it is right here. So definitely like this play from Scott.
A lot of cheap cards off of this Vision. Popsicle, Ice Block, Sail the Azurite Sea, and 2 Tipo. We're going to take the Popsicle. Some more things to feed this Hiram potentially. One thing I noticed, though, looking over at Edmund's hand when he was flicking through it earlier, he also has a Brawl. You've mentioned, Tannen, how important this Hiram can be in this matchup, especially if he lasts long enough to quest and banish another item, drawing 2 cards. as long as Edmund has Brawl in hand, that's going to be an immediate answer to this Hiram.
Really, really good call. Another important card in this matchup, Merlin Rabbit played for Edmund Chu here. It's going to draw an extra card, and if he wants, he's going to need to kind of protect those if he can a little bit in this matchup. He's not always going to be able to do that, but I do see a way to bounce one back to his hand and a second copy as well that should be able to help. Back over to Scott. We've got a Hiram drawing 2 cards off the popsicle here. How far I'll go got picked up as well, possibly something that could be sung later to get some value if we don't have another popsicle, but we do here off that second visions from last turn.
Yeah,
now,
super important for Scott here to fill his hand, especially moving into this mid to late game. Ruby Sapphire really wants to extend the game against Ruby Amethyst because when you play the attrition game, Ruby Sapphire is the one that's going to win, especially since Edmund hasn't really been able to gain too much more. We do see the Brawl come out for Edmund, though, banishing this Hiram as he quests with everything on board, pushing his lead.
Really impactful play here in this matchup. Like I said, you never want to let them quest with the Hiram if you can avoid it. You can't stop them getting the first 2 cards off it when they play it and pick something off.
He draws a Hiram off the top here as well. See if he ends up playing this. We also have access to a How Far I'll Go, but I feel like having that Hiram to potentially continue to draw cards can be pretty impactful. Right now, Scott really needs to start taking damage control over Edmund's side of the board, though. He's all the way up to 9 lore. That Rabbit, Sisu, and Diablo in play. You can't let an Amethyst deck get too close to 20, or else they're able to close it out through cards like Merlin Goat, which you see at least one of in Edmund's hand right here. Of course, Scott is 1. He could ink up to 7.
Does look like he might be inking this Hiram to play this Be Prepared here, and I don't hate this. Like you said, I think you just want to slow Edmund down. He is going to get 2 extra cards off this from the Diablo and the Merlin Rabbit going away. And this is why you see that Edmund's deck can cause problems. He's never going to run out of resources in this matchup. Generally, when you get a 3-for-1 off Be Prepared, your opponent's not going to have a lot of cards left over as your red-blue. And Edmund actually has more than Scott does at this point.
It's one thing we've seen all weekend long in these Amethyst decks. You know, Genie has been the talk of the town for Azurite Sea, but these Rabbits and Diablos specifically have played such a vital role combating these Ruby decks because when they play those Be Prepared, when they play those Sisus, if your Rabbit and your Diablo were played and didn't get to quest, they at least replace themselves so that you're able to follow back up.
Yeah, speaking of Sisu, I wonder if Scott's going to just play big Sisu here just to get a big threat into play, a nice quester, and go ahead and answer that Rabbit before Edmund starts to get, some of the snake value or something off of it. It looks like we're going to be going the ramp way.
Gonna play How Far I'll Go. Look at the top 2 cards of the deck. One goes into the Inkwell, the other in the hand. We have a Popsicle and another Sisu. We're gonna put the Sisu into the Inkwell, taking the Popsicle, use that to continue to dig through our deck. We're gonna play out the Popsicle, draw a card, find a Vision's another good way to just look further into our deck, find the answers that we need to slow Ed down, extend the game a little bit so we can start to build up our board.
Yeah, Ice Block found here by Scott, and that's a big, big find from here. This is going to make the Sisus a lot better as the game goes on. The Brawl's a lot better as well, and he's got 3 power. Now he's going to get swept up in those Sisus and Brawls from here on out.
And notably, the cards that Ed is playing, most of them in the deck don't have more than 4 strength. The only one is the Sisu Empowered Sibling, but everything else, like you mentioned, the Ice Block could be vital because once you start playing those 3-cost characters, they're no longer safe from these Sisus. We already see 2 of them in Scott's hand.
Yeah, I think Edmund's thinking about, we're going to go ahead and just Fox here, like I talked about. Want to try to protect these Rabbits if you can. You don't want to go too far out of the way to do it, but you want to try to protect them if you can in this matchup. And there's another Rabbit here as well. It's going to draw another card here from Edmund. I think there's a second copy of it in his hand along with the multiple Brawls and a few other things. I think there's a Library hiding in there as well, it looks like. So a lot of resources here for Edmund.
A Library could be a pretty good card later in the game. Helps you insulate against some of those cards like Be Prepared and Sisu. When you wipe your board, you at least have the location in play that's still going to gain you lore every turn. We look at Scott. We're going to start with a Sail the Azurite Sea. You get to draw a card. We can ink an extra card for the turn. Building up that Inkwell so we can utilize all of the cards in our hand as efficiently as possible. We have 6 remaining ink. We have not inked yet. Start off playing this Icicle or Ice Block, it looks like.
Looks like he's going to go ahead and shrink the Rabbit and play a Sisu here. Not only is that going to kill the Rabbit and draw a card, Redmond, that's going to start to threaten a Sisu shift line as well next turn. So Evan maybe needs to keep that in mind.
Yeah, with the Sisu Daring Visitor in play, you only need 6 ink to shift the Empowered Sibling on top of it. If we can find another Ice Block, we could also banish this box if we shift there.
So there's a couple things here. He already has a Friends from the Other Side here, and he already has some Brawls. Now, Sisu, the small one, not the best Brawl target, but it does play multiple things here. Not only does it keep the big Sisus from coming out, but it makes your Lady Tremaines better as well. And that's a big thing in this matchup. Since Edmund has 4 Lady Tremaine in this matchup, he wants to try to remove the Hirams, remove the smaller characters like Sisu off the board so that they're as impactful as possible as the game goes on. Because I think you see one right in the front that he drew here this turn.
Yeah, he has two of those beautiful enchanted Lady Tremaines in hand, and you called it perfectly there, Tannen. Got rid of the Sisu so that Scott couldn't shift the Sisu on top of it, saving those Lady Tremaines for those larger characters like Sisu, like Maui Half Shark, Tamatoa that we might see later on.
You know, we talked about shifting here. I wonder if there's a chance that Scott is supposed to not shift the Sisus on some of these turns if he has the small one in play, just to make sure that he has a second character play and even play around those Lady Tremaines, because this is an open deckless part of the tournament. He knows Edmund has 4 Lady Tremaines.
Definitely a heads-up play, something both of these players, I imagine, have to be thinking about, knowing each other's deck list. We are going to see a Hiram come into play, banishing a Popsicle for Scott, drawing 2 cards. Excuse me. And then after that, a Gramatala, looking at the top 2, one in hand, the other on the bottom.
Yeah, now we see the kind of pressure that's on Scott here. Not only is he's keeping up a little bit in cards here, the board pressure a little bit, but Edmund's at 10 lore while Scott's at 0. And generally, Scott has to answer what Edmund's doing. So it's hard for him to be doing answering and questing at the same time and keeping up with Edmund. And as the game goes longer, the longer we go, you have to start worrying about, some of the goats and some of the bounce stuff with that. So Edmund can start accruing lore without ever having to quest with some of these cards. So if he gets to too high of a total, you have to start really worrying. You start to get to 14, 15, 16, you can lose the game without Edmund ever questing again from that spot.
Absolutely right. That's where these Amethyst decks shine. We're going to see Edmund play a rabbit here, drawing a card as it enters play. Seen him use this rabbit very efficiently, bouncing it back to hand, playing it again. We're going to ink a Flynn Rider, playing a Brawl on this Hiram again, knowing the importance of Hiram being in play, helping Scott refill his hand, saying, I can't let you have that.
Speaking of refilling his hand, too, this library is in play. Red-blue deck not super great at getting rid of this library. They have some Mauis that can do that, but this leaves something in play that'll be able to be there after Be Prepared, after Sisu's, and draw you some extra cards and keep the gas coming for Edmund and keep this game going the way that he wants to. Edmund, I think, has found this game's going exactly how he wants to do it with this 12-0 Lord lead.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that we've seen Edmund do fantastically throughout this weekend is utilize this library in this way where you play it out, but you also play out cards that have to be answered by the opponent. So the library kind of goes by the wayside, but that one lore, if you leave it out for a couple turns, that thing will gain 4, 5, 6 lore over the course of a game, sometimes even more. And just like you mentioned earlier with these Amethyst decks, having access to cards like Merlin Goat, which are going to gain lore as soon as they enter play and leave play, all Ed needs to do is get close enough to 20 and have something like a Goat bounce in hand.
Yeah, but you see it starting to kind of get to Scott here a little bit. You can see the pressure mounting on his face. He's got some sweeper effects. He's got a few things. It looks like this is just going to be a dragon. And yeah, you can see he's like, I guess I'll hit this. And then the grandma is going to start working on the library. That sounds like something a really nice grandma would do, right?
Grandma Tala is just going to the library, taking some books out. The Maleficent Dragon, a great card for answering locations. Of course, when it's played, it banishes another character, but also that 7 strength means it's going to do a lot of damage to any locations that Ed decides to play.
Ed already up to 13 here, too, off that lore from the library this turn, getting close to the finish line here in the game one. Now, I'd like to remind everybody this is a best of 5 here in the finals.
I think there's 2 Be Prepareds in Ed's hand as well. Yeah. Having this location in play means that if we do play something like a Be Prepared, the location sticks around, makes it even tougher to deal with.
Yeah, and so this is an interesting play line here from Ed. He's going to run the Diablo into the grandma, get 2 cards off of it since it's at the library. Now he's going to use a fox. You have to pick up the Merlin Rabbit, draw an extra card from here. This is going to be able to pick off the grandma, and I believe if we ink this turn, we'll have 6 and be able to Lady Tremaine down this dragon. So this is a very clean turn from Edmund here. Yep.
You can see the power of Lady Tremaine. Just such a unique card that Edmund has brought in instead of the Madame Medusas. When we talk about the ladies in red, Madame Medusa, Lady Tremaine, a lot of times people are playing a couple copies of each, but Ed choosing instead to only play the 4 Lady Tremaine instead.
I like how Rebecca puts it, the ladies in chairs.
Yes, the ladies in chairs. I know Baker, if Baker's listening over in EU, he's going to get mad at us because I don't think Medusa's actually on a chair. I don't care. I like
that
ladies
looks like
in
a chair to me right there.
Tremaine's in a chair. I don't think Medusa's in a chair.
Yeah, whatever.
But
Baker could get over it, okay?
We are going to see a Sisu empowered sibling coming into play. 5 strength, 4 willpower character with 3 lore. It's going to make it so Scott can maybe start questing, but Ed all the way up to 15 already. Scott does have access to a card like Pirate's Life. It's not in hand, but something we might need to find to start pulling this lore lead back from Edmund.
Yeah, another Lady Tremaine here to see why Ed chose this version of the deck with 4 of this card. So good against red-blue because we see so many games where a dragon or a Sisu or a Tamatoa start to bring it home, and it's the only character they have in play. These Lady Tremaines have been doing so much work for him all weekend, and you're seeing it again here in the finals.
Looks like Scott is going to ice block this Lady Tremaine so that we can play another Sisu-empowered sibling, banishing both of those characters. Of course, Sisu banishes all characters on your opponent's side of the board with 2 strength or less. Scott has a lot of ink, has to use all of it for the Sisu. We only have 2 inkable cards in hand. One's a Tipo, the other's a Maui Half Shark, it looks like.
Yeah, I think I see, what is it? Tipo, Maui Half Shark, Be Prepared, How Far I'll Go. And
Is that the other one?
Small Sisu?
I think that might be small Sisu. Is uninkable. Going to pass it on over to Ed. Going to draw for turn.
Does Ed have another answer for the Sisu? Does he have another Lady Tremaine? It does look like he does.
Finds another Lady Tremaine, banishes the Sisu. Again, doing everything he can to keep characters off of Scott's side of the board so that this library can stay in play.
I think that's an absolutely great point. You're going to see these last 2 ink are going to move these characters over to El Biblioteca here. This library is so impactful in this matchup. Edmund doing everything he can to make sure it stays in play as long as possible, and he keeps the cards coming. I think Ed's going to go through 40 cards a game here. In these.
He definitely might. These Amethyst decks are the best of any ink for drawing cards, in my opinion. They replace themselves. A lot of cards like Merlin Rabbit when interplay. Draw you cards. We are going to see a Be Prepared by Scott here, banishing the Lady Tremaine and the Sisu. Edmund shows the goats.
Shows a goat, a way to bounce it, and since he's already at 18, that's going to be game 1, a pretty easy victory over to Ed. And I want to point out something that happened in this game, and this is one of the reasons why that I think this is...
All right, Ed having taken that game means that Scott will be on the play this turn. We're going to take a look at their hands. Scott doesn't have a 1-drop in hand.
Yeah, I think this is a pure 7.
Back a whole 7.
I was supposed to say, we're going to see a 7 from Scott here.
Needs to find some early plays.
That's also another sign of the matchup being a little rough, is like you're not even keeping specific cards here possibly. But also this is, I need to find a ramp spell on 2 or a popsicle on 1. I need to find something to do. That hand was way too heavy. Yeah,
you need to do something as a Ruby Sapphire player early in the game, just because, you know, Ed, like we mentioned last game, has the ability to play out something like the Flynn Sisu line. Of course, Scott has characters like Sisu Daring Visitor, also has actions like Brawl that they can use to get rid of the Flynn, but if you don't have those in hand and Ed gets, 3 lore, or goodness gracious, 6 lore off of one of those triggers, it's going to make it even harder for Scott to catch back up.
I'm trying to think of hands that Scott can have that will actually give Edmund pause. And I think it involves, something like Popsicle on 1 or not, Ramp on 2, hopefully with a Tipo. I think Tipo is going to loom large in this matchup. Then Grandma on 3, seeing how far I'll go off that on your next turn, and then start to play things like Sisu and Dragons from there, and you're so far ahead on ink that Ed might only be able to do 1 thing per turn while you're doing your thing at like 8 and 9 ink, and you might be able to get ahead there, and if you could protect, a Sisu or a Dragon for multiple turns from a Lady Tremaine, that is a path to victory for Scott. So look for that to be the way that he could possibly get into this match.
I feel like it is a thin line for Scott to find there, but does have a pretty good opening here, starting with a Popsicle. Then Edmund responds with a Magic Broom. Scott does find that Tipo like you talked about, Tannen. But one thing to note is Edmund played the Magic Broom on turn 1 instead of his other 1-cost characters. Magic Broom notably has 2 willpower instead of 1 like the other one. So when we quest with this Magic Broom, the Tipo only having 1 strength means it's not going to be able to banish this 1 cost.
Yeah, it does look like he's still going to cash it out. I was wondering if Ed's going to get, I don't know if greedy's the right word, but maybe just like, I want to get that extra 1 more turn of lore. Having another 1-drop, though, for Ed means that he has some pretty cheap stuff that he can play here and pick up and do the kind of Merlin, Madam Mim stuff.
Yeah, and having the double 1-drop as well on turn 2 means that Ed is going very aggressive on this game instead of just a typical, like 2-drop on turn 2. We are going back to Scott here. Able to find that ramp from Tipo on the last turn. We do have that Grimatala in hand, like you mentioned, and the How Far I'll Go to potentially follow it up with. Scott looking to see what he wants to ink on this turn.
This is shaping up to possibly be one of the games that Scott could steal, though it does look like he might actually just ink this, but I see 2 Lady Tremaines already in Edmund's hand. So that's something that if this Tipo gets to stay around, could actually help protect him quite a bit from here. So we'll see what line Scott wants to do from here, because he does have a Sisu. He does have a Tamatoa along with this. I believe I see 2 Sisus here as well. So, yeah, I think the inking is going to be difficult for Scott here. It does look like
Trying to decide.
Yeah.
Now we have Shark might be going into the Inkwell instead.
That was a Maui, not a second Sisu. Sorry for that there, but this does look like this is the line that I was talking about earlier that could possibly steal a game from you. Be prepared sent to the bottom. I didn't catch what he actually added to his hand there.
I didn't catch that either, but I do like the Grammatala being played out. It just gives you another body that you can use to challenge Ed's board. Of course, Ed is going to quest with this Turnabog's followers, not giving Scott the opportunity to challenge, drawing a card when it is banished, finding information that you don't have before you commit to anything like inking or playing cards for the turn. Does have access to a brawl this turn. We're going to put the Merlin Goat into the Inkwell, play out a Magic Broom, quest with the Diablo, and just pass the turn. Pretty slow turn there for Ed. Scott having the Halfargo in hand. I feel like this gives Scott a turn to really do something. He can play this Halfargo, singing it with Grammatala, looking at the top two cards, putting one in the Inkwell, the other in his hand. But Ed not presenting anything crazy, gives Scott a little bit of room to work with.
Yeah, if finding another Popsicle here isn't bad either. This is going to cycle for another card, and then it's going to start to loom a little bit larger on this Tamatoa as well later in the game. This Visions, I wonder if this is going to be going to the Inkwell. I was about to say, yeah, we already have a lot of the really expensive cards in our hand, and you just want to make sure that you can ink and keep these. You want the Grandma for more card quality and quantity as the game goes on. You want the Tamatoa to try to end the game, and the Sisu as well can clear up this board as soon as next turn. But it does look like he's going to go ahead and play the small human Sisu here to pick off the Magic Broom as well from Edmund. Not let him get some some extra cards off of that.
Yeah, I mean, Scott basically playing out an opening that you mentioned earlier in the game, Tannen, finding that Grammatala, being able to sing with it with the Halfargo, being able to clean up Ed's board here with Sisu, and then challenging the Diablo with the Tipo. Of course, not going to do any damage back to the Tipo, but Scott in a pretty great position.
Yeah, I mean, you see, we're already going up to, his 7th ink turn, and Edmund just put his 4th into the board here. So this is the kind of game that I think Scott can definitely steal from Edmund in this match, and it's not too much to ask for this to happen multiple times in this finals.
No, of course, as we've mentioned earlier, this is a best of 5, so one of these players has to win at least 3 times. Gonna see a Grammatala being played, looking at the top 2 cards, putting a Hiram in hand.
Yeah, I like taking the Hiram here. You've already got 2 Popsicles in play. You just want to keep the cards coming. You have an advantage here. You just want to press it really hard. That Brawl going to get added.
I think this is where you can really showcase the Ruby Sapphire ink advantage as well. You know, a lot of times they're looking for that turn 2 ramp, but if they can also get an extra turn of ramp through the Halfargo a little bit later, Scott is essentially 2 turns ahead of Ed. Last turn, all Ed could do is play a rabbit. You know, we're going into his turn 5 where he'll be able to ink for 5 and play, but Scott has been able to develop so many characters, build up his hand quite substantially, and has way more ink to work with than Edmund does.
Yeah, and Edmund, I like developing these hand Sisus as quickly as possible because you have to do you have to try to get some characters in play that'll stick around from a big Sisu here. You already see the shift lines available, or just the play it as an 8-drop as well from Scott. You want to have something to try to stick around here between this because you're trying to figure out how do I win the game from here, and I need to start building up a board. I have to start making inroads on Scott's boards here and then have my Lady Tremaines be really impactful because the 5th ink just came down for Edmund. Next turn, the Lady Tremaines can start happening, but you don't want to be playing Lady Tremaine and just getting a Tipo from your opponent's side.
Yeah, and one thing to note as well, you know, Ed does have that Be Prepared in hand. We're about 2 turns off of that, but Scott might be put in a weird position where he has such an advantage with so many characters in play. You don't want to overcommit to the board so that once that eventually comes around, Edmund can answer, especially if as Edmund is playing characters like Sisu that he can use to sort of keep your board a little bit more narrow, sort of fight for lore and board space as well.
Yeah, I wonder if Scott feels like the advantage he has in play now is good enough and he can maybe leverage that as the game goes on, or you know, like which one of the big characters do you want to develop here because you only get it for 1 more turn before the Be Prepared happens, like you were saying, which I think is a really good spot. And this Hiram, I think, is a better way to hedge it. We can still go wide here. We can draw some extra cards. You won't lose as much if you get a Be Prepared. And then Tamatoa after a Be Prepared is a pretty good revamp, but then that starts to play into the Lady Tremaines into Edmund's hand. So I don't want to write out Edmund too fast and too much just yet because that lore is still just at 3 from both of them. So Scott hasn't pulled ahead so far yet that it's insurmountable.
Scott building an even further ink advantage as well. Having played this Sail the Azurite Sea allows him to ink twice, so he's going to ink this Tamatoa and Hiram so that he can play out this Sisu empowered sibling.
Yeah, really important that he gets to put 2 more cards. That means only 1 card left over his hand, which made the Sisu small enough to be swept up by the Sisu on Edmund's side, swept up by the Sisu on Scott's side.
We are going to see Ed start with a Friends on the other side, paying the 3 ink for it, drawing 2 cards. Hasn't inked for the turn, has quite a few cards in hand, but that Sisu is pretty big for Scott here, so Ed not being able to develop anything.
And this is the biggest telegraphed be prepared I've ever seen. Scott immediately is going to quest and probably just pass right back to Edmund. Yep, there we go. And he's going to be ready to pick up all 4 of his characters, but now he's up to 9 lore. He's still ahead of Edmund, and he gets tempo back. He's the first one back to the board. Here's the problem, though. Scott's down to only a few cards left in his head. Edmund has a full grip here, but thankfully for Scott, there is a Hiram here to draw a couple cards off this popsicle.
Draw the 2 off of Hiram here. Very important card in this position as well. As you mentioned, Scott was getting pretty low. Cards in hand. Going to play out this Maui. It looks like we are.
Love getting this Maui to play. Puts another character to play to help protect from Lady Tremaine. You don't mind if you lose the Maui here. You just want to make sure that you can protect this Hiram. That is your key to victory here, drawing these extra cards over these next couple turns. We talked about this. You can't let Hiram quest in this matchup, so that is going to be a brawl for Edmund to take care of it, just to make sure he gets rid of that problematic character.
Yeah, Edmund definitely understands how powerful Hiram can be in this matchup. And not too afraid to take things a little bit slow, keeping cards in hand, not exactly developing the board just yet. And there's the Tamatoa coming in.
Big top deck for Scott there.
Yeah, huge top deck. Of course, when you play Tamatoa, he can get an item card from the discard, and he has extra lore for every item that's in play. One thing to note, though, a card that people like to really pair with this Tamatoa is Lucky Dimes. Scott is not running any Lucky Dimes in this deck, so don't have to watch out for that.
Now, we have some Lady Tremaines in Edmund's hand. He can maybe where we were. We'll see if Scott was able to take care of this. So a brawl was found to take care of this Hiram. It looks like the Tamatoa was dealt with from Edmund, so we are a little bit further. I apologize, but this Maui is still in play. No value yet from Scott, it looks like.
Yeah, and I got a quick glance at Scott's hand. It looks like we have a Sisu in hand. We're going to see that. Oh, no, I think we're a little bit further behind. So this is the Tamatoa that comes into play. Going to bring back that Popsicle. Draw a card for turn when we play the Popsicle.
All right, looks like we're about to... This is about right where we were. So this Tamatoa is going to be causing problems for Edmund because one of his main interests is Lady Tremaine. But as you see, that Maui is sitting there and causing problems for that.
Yeah, one thing that Scott is doing really well here, as you mentioned before, Tannen, keeping 2 characters in play, not allowing Edmund to play those Lady Tremaines that he has access to with the Maui in play means we can't very easily get rid of this Tamatoa outside of something like a Maleficent Dragon. Of course, Edmund not playing any of those Maleficent Dragons. It's going to be difficult for him to answer.
You see Edmund playing the rabbit, bounce with fox rabbit play here, probably digging for Be Prepared, one of the cleanest and easiest ways for him to get out of the spot that's going to be rough. I think we've played 1 so far this game.
I was about to say, I think we've only played 1 Be Prepared. Ed is playing 4 of them, so plenty in the deck to still find.
Yeah, 3 more to find. I think he can survive 1 activation of Tamatoa here. If Scott gets to make a second quest of Tamatoa, I think it's going to be really rough for Edmund to get out of this game.
Definitely going to be tough, especially since Tamatoa can bring an item card back from the discard. So I'm not sure if we have any in there yet, but we can always put a Popsicle in there ourselves and then bring it back. We're going to start with Sail the Azurite Sea, just to draw a card, give Scott the opportunity to ink a second card for turn if he wants to. We haven't inked a card for turn yet. Scott has a pretty decent hand size, 4 or 5 cards in hand, it looks like. We have a Maleficent Dragon in there, Sisu. Can't quite tell what some of the others are. That might be a Vitalisphere. Would be good to get more items in play for this Tamatoa. Play Grammatala, look at the top 2, see what we can find.
I think I saw Brawl was one of them. I'm not sure on the other one.
The Vitalisphere in hand. Not sure what Scott took there. Yeah, it was a Brawl. I see it in the back of the hand. We're going to see that Vitalisphere in play. We're going to banish the Popsicle so that we can quest with Tamatoa. He's going to gain 3 lore, bring the Popsicle back into hand. You can play it and draw another card for turn. This is the power of Tamatoa at play.
Yeah, I'm wondering if the lore counts are correct here, because I felt like Scott was lower. I'm not 100%, but we'll just go with what's on the screen. It looks like Scott is at 18, so that means if Edmund can't stop what's in play for him, this would be Scott taking game 2.
Yeah, Ed really needs something like Be Prepared here. Gonna ink up Madam and Fox. He does have the Be Prepared, so the Tamatoa is gonna be banished along with everything else, delaying the game an extra turn.
Edmund forgot to quest with his Fox there, kind of lamenting that play from himself.
Gonna follow it up with a Library. Pretty good play here. He is gonna play the Pirate's Life, and Scott's gonna take game 2.
Yeah, so exactly how we kind of drew it up a little bit before the games. We're talking about how does Scott win a match here. in this finals being such at a disadvantage with the build of Ed from here, and this is it. This is how you do it.
All right, Ed will be on the play for this turn. We're going to take a quick look at both players' initial hands. Be prepared in Ed's hand, also a Sisu 1-drop as well. And the Flynn. Might not be the best, though. A couple times he's played through that Flynn. Scott has had the brawl to answer it. Looks like Ed is only sending 3 cards back.
Looks like a full 5 for Scott here. I saw a Sail the Azurite Sea was kept. I didn't see that one. Maybe it was an Ice Block. Maybe an item. I didn't necessarily see it, but that's a really good card in this matchup. Really impactful for Scott. He's going to be able to pick off almost, you talked about this, almost every character is pretty susceptible to Ice Block, making it brawlable.
All right, we're going to get into this game 3. Ed's going to start with inking a Magic Broom, going into a turn of box followers for turn 1, and then passing the turn to Scott. We'll see if he has turn 1 play. I do see an Ice Block in hand. Going to ink a Maleficent Dragon. We'll see that Ice Block played. Must not have had the Popsicle. Looks like he doesn't. Did see that Seal the Azurite Sea, like you mentioned, Tannen, so he does have the turn 2 ramp, but we do see the Flynn Rider come out, so Scott is going to need to contest this soon.
And this is another problem in the matchup is Edmund can just have these draws on the play, and sometimes even on the draw it might be good enough. Turn 2 Flynn Rider is so problematic for Scott, especially on the play, because Scott is not going to have Brawl at the ready here, anything to answer this Flynn Rider, and generally he can't play a character with high enough strength to answer this here. Edmund, getting that extra card there, kind of important as well.
The only thing Scott could play here to stop the Flynn would be the 1-of Queen of Hearts that he's playing in his deck, which I do not see in the hand, unless it's that second to last card.
Is it that second to last card?
That's the case. He will have the 1-of card he needs to stop this.
I think it is.
Oh, he's exerting the 2. He does have it. He has it to stop the Flynn for the turn.
What a huge play for Scott here. And like you said, I think you talked about this in one of his other matches where he forgoes sailing the Azurite Sea just to make sure that this extra lore isn't given up that fast. Now, here's the other problem. The hand Sisu is for sure going to have the highest strength going forward.
Yeah, luckily Scott does have the Brawl for this situation. Doesn't even need it. He has the Sisu with the Ice Block to reduce the Flynn down to 1 strength so that you can get that Sisu trigger, banishing it.
This is another one of the hands that could possibly get it done here, Brandon. We see how far I'll go behind this. We see some Mauis. We see another Ice Block. We see a Brawl. These can probably take care of what Edmund Chu's got in play enough over the next few turns to possibly get him into the late game here.
We are going to see Ed refill his hand a little bit, singing Friends on the other side with the Sisu Emboldened Warrior, then inking for the turn, playing out this Merlin Goat, gaining a lore as it enters play. Move on to Scott's turn. Does have that How Far I'll Go, as you mentioned, Tannen. Doesn't have anything we can sing with it, but would allow him to dig a little bit into his deck and also accelerate his ramp since he missed that turn 2 ramp.
He's already passed the first really big test of this game. The Flynn Rider did not get any lore for Edmund. If that had gotten 3 or 6, it might have been really hard for Scott to win this game. Now he's in a much better position. He's still a little behind on the board, but he's got the How Far I'll Go, like we were talking about, a few other things depending on what's on top of his deck here. He's starting to get into this game just a little bit and be okay in the spot against Edmund.
As long as Scott can continue to accelerate his ink and keep Ed under control, playing a couple of things to the board and also keeping his hand full, I think he's going to be okay here. It looks like we're going to see the second Ice Block being played.
And this means that he can brawl the Sisu down, I believe.
Yeah, he would have.
If he'd like to.
Yeah, the Sisu would be at 4 strength with 3 cards in hand for Scott. So if you use both Ice Blocks, Sisu goes down to 2 strength, and then you can use the Brawl.
Do you want to just take care of the Merlin? I was going to say, nah, I think you want to go for the Sisu here, the highest priority play here. It is questing for 2.
Quest with the Sisu here for 1. It does have evasive, so we can do that safely without repercussions of the Merlin Goat challenging it back. Ed does have a Madam M Fox and Snake in hand as he's shuffling those around. Could potentially bounce this Goat back to hand. Gaining an extra lore as the Goat leaves play. Card from set 2 that we've seen time and time again with that Merlin Mim combo.
Yeah, I think it's a big deal that the Sisu has evasive here as well as not be able to pick it off by the Goat, because Edmund would love to start trading here if he possibly could pick off any characters he can again to make those leadership remains as impactful as possible.
Yeah, I love that evasive is on the Sisu because it allows you to quest, keeps your opponent from trading like you mentioned, but also makes it a little bit more likely that you can set up a big Sisu shift. Of course, Edmund recognizing that is going to brawl the Sisu away so that Scott can't get that shift. Scott only has 4 ink, could only go to 5, so it'd be 2 turns before we could do that, but understanding that it might be detrimental.
Yeah, it puts the Fox into his ink as well, and this is pretty big for Edmund because this allows him to keep that snake and the cheaper way to start bouncing some of these characters here because he lost his goat here, so he'll be able to bounce the goat, but if he starts to put Lady Tremaine into play, he's probably going to want to start picking her up as well and trying to play her as often as possible. I think if Edmund could play Lady Tremaine every turn for the rest of the game, he'd probably be okay with it.
Yeah, and we see how great these ice blocks are, especially if you can get them down early, as we see Scott using the ice blocks to reduce the strength of Merlin down to 2, challenging the Maui. There's the Lady Tremaine that you talked about, playing the Lady Tremaine out. Scott is going to choose to banish the Queen of Hearts instead of the Maui here.
Now, both the players are on really low resources as well. Edmund's down to 1 card here. I think Scott's going to be down to 1 after this How Far I'll Go. So he's going to be back up to 2.
Sisu, and I couldn't quite find what the other card is. But like you said, finding a way to get more cards in your hand would be pretty good for Scott here.
It does both the things he wants, right? Extra card in hand, extra ink in your ink well. This card is perfect for this deck.
Scott taking a second to figure out if he wants to take the Sisu or whatever other card was in there.
Also, getting to sing this off Maui is really big here. You don't have to run into the Diablo and give an extra card to Edmund, so you get a little extra value here. Plus, any of the cards that you draw that you might want to play this turn, you could play, though Scott doesn't have one. It looks like he's going to ink and pass over just 1 card in hand. So this game is getting really, really, really close. Be prepared, and Flynn Rider left over for Edmund there. There we go. I love this from Ed. Keep the board as clean as possible. That is operation number 1. That's what we need to do in all the turns.
Especially since we're a little low on cards for Ed here, only having to be prepared in the Flynn. We're going to play out the Flynn, more or less to just get a body out here, another character that can gain lore. Of course, the Diablo with 0 strength is not going to help the Flynn trigger anything, but it does force Scott to play a character to combat the Flynn.
I think we're going to see some big haymakers back and forth here. Little Sisu is going to clean this up, draw an extra card for Edmund off the Diablo, but I wonder if, depending on what Ed gets, if he doesn't get a Lady Tremaine here, I believe we might just have to say...
I think I saw like Lady Tremaine and a Brawl.
Yeah, so maybe trying to get a little extra value off this Be Prepared.
Sisu that Edmund drew, not a Lady Tremaine. Can't use that Sisu to banish the other one. Finding a rabbit, not a terrible draw. A card you can play, draw another card. Are going to see Edmund do that. Finding a library.
And maybe wanting a little more value off of his Be Prepared here. Brawl into library is pretty nice here. That can survive a Sisu hit. So that's going to be pretty nice over the next couple turns. Edmund already at 7 ink. Next turn, he would be able to move the rabbit over the library before the Be Prepared here, draw an extra card for his troubles.
Yeah, this is an interesting play, too, because Scott understands that Edmund is at an ink total for that. Has to consider challenging into this library, because if Edmund plays the Be Prepared, wipes everything from the board that Scott potentially plays this turn, and the library's left undamaged, we're going to see what happened in game 1 with this library gaining lore over and over.
I think these are really good points from you, because this highlights another problem in the matchup that Scott has. He has to respect Be Prepared at all times. So even if Edmund doesn't have it, Scott has to play around it in certain spots, and you get value of having the card from... Even if you don't have the card, you can get a lot of value of it there because he has to play around it so much. So you see him hesitating in the spot. Do I want to add another character to the board? Do I want to give up a 2-for-1 here? Possibly a 3-for-1 or 4-for-1 because the characters the player are going to draw cards off this library as well. It's a really hard spot for him to be in.
Yeah, it's one of the reasons that I love library so much. Looks like we are a little bit ahead in the game, having the rabbit being brought to the library. Maui Half Shark is coming to play along with the Lady Tremaine.
Do we have a way to bounce the Lady Tremaine and answer this Maui here? This is a card that is very, very scary to have in play. It means Edmund probably can't quest while this is in play.
Also, something to note with that 5 damage on the library, it does look like Scott decided to challenge the library with the Sisu. I think then Edmund, on his next turn, played the Lady Tremaine to banish the Sisu. Now we're here with the Maui Half Shark.
Edmund with a big Sisu, Be Prepared, and I believe a rabbit in his hand here are the cards. How does he want to play it from here? He does have 7. So he could be prepared, draw 2 extra cards here. Does he want to ink and draw the 3rd one by moving the lady over? We'll see.
One of the things that I love about Maui Half Shark is it does put your opponent in an interesting scenario where you don't particularly want to exert your characters to sing or quest or challenge, because Maui Half Shark can get a challenge off and banish a character. Scott can pull an action card back from his discard.
All right, so the rabbit drew him an extra card here, which I think was a snake. That's pretty big here. If he wants, he could pick up either one, a rabbit to draw an extra card if that's what he's looking for, or he's going to maybe possibly pick up this Lady Tremaine. With this rabbit leaving, he's going to draw an extra card as well. This is kind of baiting Scott a little bit. Hey, you might need to advance your board here a little bit. You might need to put some more stuff in here. This allows him to quest a little bit, not get challenged by the Maui as well. That can be really important here. You don't want to let the Maui do that too much if you can avoid it.
Ed moving the Lady Tremaine to the library and questing with it. That way that at least if it is challenged by the Maui Half Shark and banished, Ed will get a card off of the deal. Do see a Pirate's Life in hand, Tamatoa, and Hiram for Scott here.
I think Brawl, how far I'll go is what's in the discard pile for Scott that he could possibly get back here as well. So
how far I'll go could be big. Ramping also allowing you to dig through the deck a little. You have these ice blocks in play we could use to play Hiram and draw some cards. We're going to use an ice block to reduce the strength of Lady Tremaine. Play that Hiram, draw 2 cards. Find a Sisu and a Dragon. This could be big.
Wow, Scott's hand is really, really powerful from this spot.
And we also, that Maleficent Dragon could be huge here. Edmund leaves a card like Lady Tremaine in play. Ever gets a Sisu out, we have the answer for it immediately.
Yeah, this is interesting. I like being able to quest with the characters that are at the library because it's kind of daring Maui. Like, right, you'll get your action back, but I'm going to get a whole nother card back, and then the library is still here.
We see how much Scott respects the potential Be Prepared from Edmund here, because instead of challenging this Lady Tremaine and pulling back an action on that turn, he instead understands that I have to get rid of this location, because if Ed decides to Be Prepared this board, wouldn't be a terrible Be Prepared on his part, then I'm going to be left with an empty board, and he's going to still have the library.
Not to mention, with this quest up, Edmund's up to 16. He is now showing I've got enough to win the game from here. Scott, though, like you said, he's got this Maui. He's got a Pirate's Life in his hand. He's got other things in his discard pile. Maybe he can cobble it together here, though. The Dragon is the only removal he's got here, so he could maybe take care of 2 characters this turn from Edmund.
Yeah, that Sisu Empowered Sibling sitting on Edmund's side of the board. Quest for 3 total, so...
Yeah, maybe that's going to be a good target. Maybe you have to use the Dragon to take care of the Sisu. Use the Maui to take care of, I guess, Lady
Probably
Tremaine.
the Tremaine, because she has 2 lore.
Yeah, Lady
so
Tremaine.
We're going to do the Ice Block, challenging the Lady Tremaine so that we only do 2. She only does 2 damage to the Maui Half Shark. What are we going to bring back from the discard?
Looks like how far I'll go. Yep.
Bring back how far I'll go. We're going to Inca Tipo. Yep, and we're going to see the Maleficent Dragon coming in and banishing Sisu Empowered Sibling. 1 dragon for another.
Maui having evasive is really big here, too. Edmund isn't able to challenge into this. Though that Be Prepared is still looming.
Yeah, we're so close for Ed here. We can get up to 18 lore at that point. All we need is a goat bounce. Even just a goat in play. Pretty much in this game. A bounce snake with the fox here.
18.
Playing the snake, bouncing the rabbit, drawing a card.
Yeah, he's just questing here. He's just going to try to end the game as quickly as possible over the next few turns. He's like, it's pretty obvious you don't have a sweeper in this spot. I'm just going to put enough in play to win the game from here, and it's going to be up to you to find it, though we do see a Pirate's Life in Scott's hand. That could possibly be sung this turn by one of his characters and maybe keep him out of this. Edmund's at 18 and is showing 3 in play here.
Pirate's Life would reduce Edmund's lore by 2 and gain Scott 2 lore. As you mentioned, we can sing with it, but also we have an Ice Block Sisu combo. We can get rid of the snake and the rabbit on this turn. If we play the Sisu, we're going to sing how far I'll go first, looking at the top 2 cards of the deck.
Extra lore added here for Scott as well. Don't forget, he's starting to climb up this lore quite a bit.
That is true. With every action that we play with this Maui Half Shark in play, he gains an extra lore. We can still have the Pirate's Life play if we sing with the Maleficent here. So just trying to see if we can find anything that might give us a more optimal play in this scenario. Looks like we're going to take a Popsicle. Not quite sure what the other card was that went into the Inkwell.
I don't know how it works if Maleficent sings a Pirate's Life. A Pirate Dragon might be the scariest thing I've ever heard of.
I'd like to have a dragon if I were a pirate, I'll be honest. We're going to play the Popsicle, drawing another card. Scott basically just seeing what options he has before he commits to anything. We are going to see the Ice Block being played and the Sisu come down, banishing the rabbit and the snake. Ed's going to draw a card.
And then Pirate's Life is going to get sung off of Maleficent. That's going to gain 3 lore for Scott, take 2 away from Edmund. So Edmund's going to go back down to 16, so Goat doesn't get it done anymore. But this Be Prepared is about to be huge for Edmund Chu.
Yeah, I mean, I'm slamming this Be Prepared if I'm Edmund here.
I think he's got 9 ink, can maybe even go up to 10 here this turn, so that means that he's going to be able to advance his board as well. So 17. Great patience from Edmund Chu. And look, you can see Scott, he's got his hand up already. Yeah, I'm getting ready to get rid of all these cards.
Yeah, as soon as you see Ed questing with that fox immediately, you just assume that the Be Prepared is coming.
Okay, so I see at least a 1-drop from Edmund Chu here. There's a Diablo. There is a Goat in his hand. So this will quest him up to 18. Goat will go up to 19. If there is a bounce in Edmund's hand, he has enough to finish the game next turn from Scott, barring anything happening.
That would almost guarantee the win. Scott would have to find his second Pirate's Life or find a way to Maui rush, challenge something, bring the Pirate Lights back and play it.
Yeah, I don't think he has it just yet. I got a little bit of a look at the hand. I think it's Rabbit, Goat, and I think a red card. So it looks like he might not have the 20th lore next turn.
This is one of the reasons that I love this card like Diablo. It is such a just small play. It's a 1-cost character, not something you want to use your removal on, but it is so close to 20 that God might be forced to play a removal card here just to get rid of the Diablo, respecting a potential goat play.
Yeah, you might just have to play the Sisu here just to keep him, Edmund, away from just having goat bounce goat.
Be prepared in a Sisu in hand. Either of those we can use. Get rid of this Diablo if that's what Scott really has to do. Fortunately, we can't really use the Grammatala or the Tamatoa this turn and banish the Diablo unless we find something like a Brawl or a little Sisu off of the Grandma.
Yeah, with only 8 ink left, he can't double play something here. So I think, yeah, you just spend the most ink possible, play the Sisu, draw a card off Diablo. Was it a way to bounce the goat multiple times, maybe? Doesn't look like it just yet, so we're going to be playing a few more turns here.
Don't see a bounce card in hand. Looks like a Sisu, Library, Goat, Rabbit. Not quite sure what the other card is.
Some really back and forth stuff here between these two guys. I'm absolutely loving this finals. Draw a card, another Sisu. I think this one was affectionately called the hand Sisu. It does quest for 2, though, which is really nice for Edmund here.
Yeah, I mean, Ed is just going to force an answer here, and the Library coming after it, knowing that a Be Prepared might be an out if Scott has it, but if he plays the Be Prepared, then the Library might survive for the next turn, gaining that extra lore that we need just to follow it up with a goat.
Then followed up with the goat, any bounce would still put him into the 20 range here. Edmund doing everything he can to force Scott into having to make some interesting plays to stay alive here. Man, Library has been really, really impressive for Edmund here this week, and I love the build of this deck. So it does look like going to go ahead and sing Be Prepared.
That way we don't use any of our ink. We can use all of it for the rest of this turn. We're going to follow that up with a Hiram, banishing a Popsicle. Pretty decent draw. We can find some other stuff in our deck that we may need to force Edmund off of game.
Another Pirate's Life would be nice. Grandma's going to dig for 2 cards.
There's a Hideaway in hand. We can use this to banish or to put the Library into the Inkwell as well.
Oh, that's really, really huge for
Scott's
Scott.
only playing 1. Yeah, only playing 1 Hideaway.
This is huge for Scott here.
Huge card to find here. Getting rid of the Library, making that Be Prepared play much better.
Edmund with a ton of ink and a ton of cards here. 17 lore.
Finds the Brawl for the Hiram, getting that out so that Scott can't draw extra cards.
That's
find a way to delay the game.
Really important for Edmund. Edmund's going to put him back into the same situation yet again. Magic Broom and Sisu.
3 lore on board. Have to banish something here. Specifically the Sisu in case if you respect the goat.
We've been through multiple sweepers the last few turns.
There is a Pirate's Life in hand. That means we can reduce Edmund's lore by 2. And we can gain 2 this turn if we want to. Putting him off a little bit more. We're going to start with a Vision of the Future, looking at the top 5. Putting 1 in hand.
Still 8 ink left over for Scott here, too, so he might even be able to do multiple things here this turn, depending on what he gets off this Visions. Because otherwise, I think his hand is just Tamatoa's. Was that what was left over with?
It's Tamatoa and is it a Grandma? No, we played the Grandma. I'm not sure what the other one was.
Might just be a second copy.
Yeah, 2 Tamatoas there.
Another Azurite Sea as well. Just going to keep digging before he makes the final decision on what he's going to do, so... Dig 1 more card deeper. It looks like a Popsicle.
Scott really threading the needle on this match here, finding every way to stay into the game, digging deep, deep, deep into his deck so we can continue to do this.
Yeah, Popsicle 1 more card deeper. Finds a Hiram. All these cards are inkable, so he can ink something and still play a Pirate's Life.
Yeah, Tamatoa go into play, or go into ink.
It looks like it's going to be the Tamatoa. Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know if you can get rid of the Hiram. You might need it just to draw the cards so much next turn. So Pirate's Life, going to move to 10, down to 15 for Edmund here.
Edmund off a little bit. One thing to note, though, Edmund has 3 lore on board, though, so if he quests with these characters, he's going to be 1 lore ahead at the end of his next turn than he was previously.
And he's still at the point where we know there's a goat in Edmund's hand as well, so any bounce for the goat here, or a second goat itself...
Would win the game.
Would win the game for Edmund.
Could go up to 18.
Shows the goat.
Sees the goat. There's the Be Prepared. It's going to get rid of the goat. Edmund's going to win his second game. This game 3, we're going to a 4th game.
Wow. What games from these two so far in the finals? This one's playing out. What have been going on after these games? It's been so much fun. I feel like I'm in like a stadium or something right now. This is awesome.
I know there's a huge viewing area out here. I can see tons of people sitting there, a bunch of people standing as well.
Brandon, I don't see an empty seat in the house, and the entire area around it is lined. We've got hundreds of players out here watching this. Like everybody in the crowd to give yourself a round of applause or a shout. Y'all are awesome. Thanks for watching this with us.
Yeah, and everybody in the Twitch chat, let's get some hype going for this finals game. If Ed wins this, he will be the champion. Scott has to win 2 matches in a row in order to come back. Of course, this being the 4th game, Scott going to get to go first on this game. We're going to get a quick look at these hand alters before we get into this game 4.
No, I know you want that game 5. Edmund would do anything
man.
he can do to stop that.
I want the game 5. Yeah. And I mean, if we keep going, that's the pattern, right? Ed went first game, or sorry, Scott went first game 1. Ed won. Then it has been going back and forth. So definitely could happen here for Scott. We do see the popsicle in the opening hand. We have a brawl in there as well. We do find the ramp.
We see that Azurite C in his hand as well for Scott. This is one of the openers that could possibly get it done. I see that how far we'll go as well. We talk about how important it is for him to just do as good as he possibly, all the best plays he could possibly make for the first couple turns. He might be able to keep up.
Ed's going to start inking a Sisu, playing a Magic Broom. Not sure that we have the Flynn in there. Going to start with a Sail the Azurite C. Inking a Sail the Azurite C. We can ink another card this turn if we want to. It looks like the Maui Half Shark might be going into the inkwell. Passing it back to Edmund. Do we have a way to follow this up? Draws a Friends on the other side for this turn. Going to quest with the Magic Broom. I think we had another Turnbox Followers in there. Yep, we're going to play that. Banish the Broom. Draw a card from the Broom's ability. There's the Snake.
Yeah, maybe trying to high roll there, find another 1 or maybe another good 3 for him to really curve out as hard as possible this game. Does he have? I was supposed to say, is that another? Nope. Okay.
Fox. We're just going to ink the Fox, pass it back to Scott.
He's really good at hiding some of the cards from us on the screen there. I'm about to talk to Edmund after this.
Do you have how far it goes so we could play on this turn as well? Pretty good for Scott here. Edmund having such a slow start. You have the ability to play these how far it goes instead of develop towards the board, increasing your ink while also increasing cards in hand. That's what Scott's going to do here.
Really, really great point, Brandon, that the fact that, let's say Edmund had played a Flynn Rider here on turn 2. This would be kind of the nightmare scenario because then you would have to use Brawl. You don't get to use how far I'll go. You know, you would have the answer, but this is the best scenario for Scott here. There's only the followers in play. I get to use my entire turn, like how far I'll go, put another card in my inkwell, get another card in my hand. Now I have a humongous ink advantage. I've got almost as many cards as Edmund does, and I'm not under a ton of pressure just yet. This is another game that Scott might be able to steal.
Yeah, I mean, already it's only turn 3, and Scott is 2 ink ahead between Sail the Azurite Sea and the How Far I'll Go. Definitely looking good for Scott. Edmund's going to go ahead and quest with the Turnbox Followers, banishing it for its ability, drawing a card, trying to find something to help him get into this game. Do we have a 3-cost card we can play? We do have a library that we could play out this turn for 3.
I see a Sisu as well in his hand here, and I think that's what's coming out.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. I missed the Sisu. That's going to be a good play.
He's good at hiding them. Yeah.
Yeah. But the foil cards are super pretty. A little bit difficult to see in the hand sometimes, though. We are going to pass it back to Scott, though. Already can play up to 6 ink this turn. We ink a card. Start by inking a Brawl, it looks like. Oh, yeah. Okay. We're getting this is a Maui Half Shark on turn 4.
And this is another spot where Scott can really, really get ahead in a game. If Edmund does not have a way to answer this, and let's be honest, he's only on 4 ink. It's quite a while till he can find a way to answer this Maui Shark. It stops Edmund in his tracks. It's really, really hard. Exactly. He can't quest here just because you'd be getting back how far I'll go. You could even get back Azurite C. This Maui is unbelievably impactful when it's in play.
You said it best, Stan, and it stops Edmund in his tracks. The only thing he's been able to quest with is the Turnbox Followers and the Magic Broom. And of course, because Maui has evasive, makes for a great singer. We're going to sing How Far I'll Go with this Maui Half Shark. Top 2 cards, 1 in hand, go to the ink. Looks like we're going to put the Visions of the Future in hand, putting the Sisu Powered Sibling into the inkwell. We're going to play that Visions of the Future. Dig 5 cards deep, find another card to put into our hand with the rest on the bottom.
Also, lore every single time here for Scott.
Yes, you're absolutely right. Every action that gets played because of that Maui ability, you gain an extra lore. Already, Scott has caught up to Edmund in lore total.
Yeah, a couple of big hitters here for Scott. A couple going to the bottom, but definitely a few in his hand as well. I was going to say, I think I see another Maui, a Sisu, a Queen of Hearts, a Popsicle. I didn't catch the last one. Oh, it's another How Far I'll Go. So the actions keep coming for Scott, and I think that's going to be really good. And we're like,
oh, and you do find the Pirate's Life too. Saw how impactful that card was doing in the last game, but we can also get another how far I'll go off. Oh my gosh. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 ways to ramp. He's 4 ink ahead of Ed at this point.
He's about to be 5 if he wants to. He's about to have more than double Edmund's ink here this game.
This is turn 5.
totally fair and balanced here. Speaking of 5, Brandon, we might be getting that 5th game.
We might be, the way this game is looking. Scott already at 9 ink. We're going to move over to Edmund, though. Edmund does have a lot of cards in hand. Looks like we're going to start by questing with this rabbit, bouncing it with the snake so we can draw some extra cards before we ink for the turn. Going to ink a turn of box followers, follow it up with friends on the other side, continue to draw cards. I think Eds is looking for an out here.
He's trying to find Be Prepared, I think, at this point. He knows that the writing's on the wall. That
Be
if any more
Prepared or
characters,
Lady Tremaine.
Yeah, I think he has a Lady Tremaine, so what he needs to do is the Lady Tremaine might be able to answer this Shark in a turn. Likely, Scott is going to play another character here, so he's trying to find ways that I might have to eventually just grind through this as the game goes on, because Scott is only still at 3. He's been getting a lot off of his characters here, off of his actions here, but he's not pulling away just yet. So Edmund still has a lot of play, ton of cards in his hand, doesn't need to panic just yet.
Are going to go ahead and quest with this Maui Half Shark, it looks like. Going to play this Pirate's Life. Looks like we are. I see the 6 ink exerted, so that's going to be 3 lore gained for Scott. Edmund goes down to 0. Not looking good for Ed here.
Yeah. Bigger leads surmounted from Scott here, and this is huge. This is huge here. Tipo might look innocuous. You don't even put another card into the ink wall with it here, but this is so big. We're going into the 6 ink turn for Edmund here, and that Lady Tremaine would be able to answer the Maui. Not so much now.
Not with the Tipo. Edmund just continues to dig through his deck.
Has he still not found a Be Prepared?
I don't think he has.
I can't tell every card.
No,
is that one in the bottom, the 3rd card?
Yeah, I think that might be a Be Prepared. Ed just trying to do what he can. Yeah, he's bringing the Be Prepared to the top, knowing that it has to be played on the next turn to try and get back in this game. Scott has so much ink.
Thanks for helping us out there a little bit, Ed.
Has the Hiram as well to play, banish the Popsicle and draw, but Scott, knowing that Edmund's going into a 7th ink, is considering what characters am I willing to play this turn and potentially lose to a Be Prepared. See Scott, you see Edmund has a 1/3 of his deck in his hand. He surely has to have the Be Prepared.
I want to talk about this too. If Edmund gets off this Be Prepared next turn, he's not going to get any value off of it from his side, right? But he is going to be able to clean up the board. Scott will be the first person to get back to the board, but I do think that Edmund's going to start to pull away from the game, possibly from here. Well, let's see what Scott draws for these 2 cards. He gets a Be Prepared of his own and a Grandma. Okay, let's see if he wants to actually extend the Grandma here. But Edmund has so many cards in his hand, he's going to be able to make sure that all of his turns are the most efficient possible. The Lady Tremaines are going to loom very large from that spot. I don't know if he has a Brawl or not, but any way to take care of something like that Hiram or whatever would be really, really big here as well. So it does look like this Be Prepared is about to get a ton of value after the 4 lore comes from Edmund Joe. There's no way that he doesn't Be Prepared here this turn, is there?
I feel like you have to, especially after getting that Sisu. We are going to quest for 4 here, catching back up, and the Be Prepared is going to come down, wiping Scott's board along with Edmund, resetting the board state. Ed has a lot of ink in his inkwell as well. Not catching up to Scott necessarily, but Edmund has so many cards in hand. I feel like this is what he was playing for. He knew if he could get this Be Prepared off, he could slowly start to rebuild, start to answer. He just needed options.
Maleficent, Hideaway, the 2 choices here. Hideaway going to the bottom, Maleficent added to Scott's hand. That's a big draw for him here as well. Going to be able to answer some of these problematic characters from Edmund over the next turn. Going to get that 2nd one into play, get that Maui.
Are going to see a Brawl coming off the top. We have plenty of cards that we can play this turn, starting with a Rabbit, continuing to draw. We find a Crab. Bounce this Rabbit back if we have a Snake or a Fox in hand.
Crab's actually a decent pickup for Edmund here, too. Over the next couple turns, you might be able to use something like a Rabbit or one of his smaller characters to either pick off a Maui or pick off a Grandma, start to clear up the board a little bit and start to make maybe those later Tremaines a little more impactful as well. Because if he ever gets really good Lady Tremaine value, I think the game's going to start to get away from Scott.
When we look at how powerful or how strong of an opening Scott had, but Ed Chu right now in the lead on lore, continuing to create threats on board, playing the Rabbit, Sisu, and Diablo on this last turn, kind of putting the shifting the momentum here, making Scott having to respond to what Edmund's doing.
Yeah, Big Sisu actually gets quite a bit done here. Ed would draw 2 more cards, but we remove Diablo and the Rabbit from the board. I was going to say, we don't have any ways to get our hand down low enough to get everything, do we? I don't think we do. That would take a lot of play from us here, and most of these cards replace themselves.
Are going to start with the Vision of the Future. We'll see what we can find in the top 5 of our deck. take one and put the rest on the bottom. A Popsicle, another Sisu, another Dragon. We're going to take the Maleficent Dragon, sending a Dragon, Sisu, Maleficent Dragon, and a Sisu to the bottom of the deck. Gives us another board wipe, though. Can still play this Be Prepared if we want. Looks like it might be inking the Maui.
Maui into Sisu. That's going to take care of the Rabbit and the Diablo here. It's going to draw 2 more cards for Edmund here. Edmund's starting to get a lot higher on that ink count, and that's going to be good for him at the points where he's going to be able to keep up in number of cards played per turn with Scott, and that's where maybe he could start to get an advantage.
Yeah, I mean, one of these things that Amethyst decks do so well is you can continue to play cards out to the board. Sometimes if they survive, they can quest, but if not, a lot of times they'll just replace themselves. So Edmund having so many cards in hand, as he starts to catch up in ink, he's going to be able to continue to apply pressure to Scott, and tides are turning a little bit. Scott's gonna have to continue to stop Ed. Of course, Scott has plenty of characters on board. You know, there's 4 lore between the Sisu and the Grandma for Scott here.
I think we're going to see a little bit of degging from Edmund here. Yeah, he's going to draw off the Rabbit, draw off the Magic Broom, because he doesn't have any clean ways to take care of the Sisu just yet. He can take care of the Grandma, maybe even take care of the Maui with a Madam later. A lady, I apologize. But the thing is, Sisu questing for 3 here is actually becoming a problem because Scott is at 10 lore matchup if he can.
Yeah, there's a weird balance you have to play when you're going against Edmund's deck, where you have the Be Prepareds and the Sisus. You kind of have to play around for the board wipes, but you also don't want your deck to be, or you don't want your board to be too narrow either for those Lady Tremaines.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier. It's like, I can play around Be Prepared, I can play around Sisu, but then what if he doesn't have it? Now I'm giving him too much value off a card he doesn't have, but then if I play too much into it, I'm giving him too much value on the card if he does have it. It's a hard problem. It's a hard rope. It's a very tight rope that you have to walk here. And I'm glad Scott's in the seat and I'm not, because I don't know if I could walk that rope.
Well, I was about to say, you know, we've seen Scott throughout this match. You know, he's been walking these tight ropes pretty well. You're going to see the Maleficent Dragon being played, banishing the Fox.
Yeah, and that Ice Block does a good job here with the 2 cards coming out of hand of letting the Maui stay around here. Do we have another Be Prepared from Eben? I don't know if he has it in his hand, but if he were to draw off the top here, this would be a really good spot for it. He can maybe get some extra draws off of it too. He can run the Diablo into something. He get an extra card off the top here.
Like a Be Prepared here would be really good.
Yeah.
Rid of the dragons and the Maui. He's playing 4 Be Prepareds. Ed is playing.
Could still be prepared here if he drew it, and he has no other way to deal with these 2 dragons.
Have a Fox here. We can bounce the Crab, boosting the Merlin Fox. Could challenge and banish the Sisu.
Really good point. And for me, it's going to take care of one of them anyway. There we go. It's going to take care of the dragon.
Yeah, not too bad. Either of these dragons being banished is pretty good for Ed. Followed up with a Turn-a-Box Followers of his own.
Yeah, if you're Scott, you got to be a little worried. Maybe try to find a way to take care of this Madame Tremaine. It's kind of like the rabbits here. You don't want to leave them on board too long if you want, because Ed gets a lot of value off being able to bounce them back to his hand and playing them yet again. So do we have
access?
We have another
dragon, yeah.
Okay.
Plenty of ink to use it as well.
Yeah. That's going to put him up to 16 here, too. Scott might be able to steal this game.
Notably, not playing Lucky Dime, but with the Maui Half Shark, we can play a couple actions. We can gain lore that way, or a Pirate's Life, you know, would boost us a couple lore as well.
Yeah, if you're Edmund, you got to start getting worried about this total here. 15s and 16s are worrisome because any quest plus a Pirate's Life generally ends the game.
Taking some time to figure out what he wants to play, maybe considering the visions.
Yeah, I think he can Visions here still have enough to be able to play the dragon behind this as well. So let's see 5 cards. Maybe we find something that changes our mind, because I got to believe the dragon's going to come down this turn.
I think we have a Vitalosphere, Popsicle, Grammatala, Visions of the Future, a little Sisu, or human Sisu.
Yeah, I don't think there's any way that, I was going to say, I don't think there's any way you can protect the Sisu here, right? To be able to take out enough stuff from Edmund's side to make sure the Sisu can survive into the next turn. Let's see. All right, so 4 going to be the Grandma. Maybe we can find a Brawl here. All right, Maui Half Shark.
Again,
Human Sisu.
Maui Half Shark can help close this game out if we can find some action.
A really good point. Edmund's lore total pretty irrelevant here, down at 4.
Yeah, he has had to do so much work to take care of Scott's board for the majority of this game. hasn't quite had the opportunity to gain any lore himself.
God, thinking long and hard about this choice.
Why these finals matches are untimed. Any mistake could cost these players the game.
Like he took the Sisu. Yep. Go ahead and take care of this follower. It's going to take a lore away and a card draw away from Edmund Chu here.
Pass back to Edmund as he's organizing his ink. I believe we have 10 ink available to us. 11 if we ink a card for the turn.
Yeah, Fox off the top.
Fox pretty good. We could bounce the Lady Tremaine back. Use Fox to banish the Sisu.
Bounce Lady Tremaine, trade into the Sisu. All right, so go ahead and get the 2 cards. There we go. We found a Be Prepared here. If that's what he wants to do, he's got enough here that he can Be Prepared plus possibly develop his board a little bit after this as well. Be Prepared starts to make the Lady Tremaines in his hand a lot more impactful. He doesn't know that there's a Tipo sitting in Scott's hand to possibly protect from that.
And Scott has so much ink, likely going to be able to play pretty much anything plus another card on the next turn. So if these Lady Tremaines get slightly worse as the game goes on and Scott continues to build his ink well.
I think Edmund's got 10 ink here this turn.
I think both Ed and Scott does.
And since he's questing here, I've got to believe this means that we're getting a Be Prepared here, or we're either getting some Fox shenanigans here this turn.
I wouldn't be surprised if we bounce with the Fox
and
then replay the Lady Tremaine and force Scott to banish one of his characters.
I don't hate that playline except for the fact that Scott is at 16 lore here, and that's what scares me. I don't think I would want to leave anything in play because it also leaves an extra out. If you have a big Sisu onto the small Sisu, that's another 3 immediately as well.
Ed's going to play the rabbit, draw a card, get a little bit more information, maybe another option. Still haven't inked for the turn, so do have access to 7 on this turn. Still safely Be Prepared if we ink a card from our hand.
So many cards here, so many choices for Edmund. This is one of the problems when you draw too many cards in the game. You're like, I've got 10 different choices.
Yeah, thinking out of all the lines, we are gonna play Madam and Fox, bouncing this rabbit so we can draw another card.
Picked up a snake here as well.
Use the Fox to rush into that Sisu.
Yeah, the Brawl is going to take down the small Sisu. Love that play. It takes away a big Sisu shift line from Scott here. So Scott generally can't win the game from here with a Pirate's Life. It would only go up to 19. I don't know if he has enough for Pirate's Life plus Maui Half Shark. I mean, he has a lot of ink. I don't know if he has that much ink. So let's see.
I think he has 10 ink available to him, so not quite enough for both of those.
All right, a Hiram off the top here can go deeper into the deck. It looks like we're going to start with that Hiram, get a couple cards deeper. The Popsicle's going to be going into the yard.
We can find off these top 2, a Tipo and a Vitalosphere.
Does the Vitalosphere do anything? Does Hiram get to do a decent challenge here? I don't know if you need to really be doing that. You don't need to be clearing Edmund's board that much.
No, Edmund's so far behind in lore right now that I think you're just trying to get stuff to stick. You know, find a way to get yourself to 20.
Yeah, I'm wondering, since we got a second Tipo in Scott's hand here, after this quest here, I wonder how many Tipos he's going to be deploying to the board. I think 1 is okay because it helps protect against the Lady Tremaine that we have in play. We know there's got to be some kind of bounce in Edmund's hand. He's got 10 cards in his hand. He's probably got a snake. He's probably got another Fox at this point. So I think at least 1 Tipo really makes sense here from Scott. The second one, maybe not. Maybe you can play the Vitalosphere here, or that's something you might want to keep away from Edmund knowing. But yeah, I was going to say, might as well just use the ink while you've got it. It just puts Edmund into a really tough spot. I love just playing 1 of the Tipos here from Scott.
Yeah, it puts Ed in a position where you know that Scott don't do anything with this board, can go up to 19 on this next turn. All you would need is a Maui Half Shark and a action like we mentioned. Of course, Scott has the Be Prepared in hand, so you need a cheaper action than that.
So Edmund might not even have to use the Be Prepared here this turn. He has a big Sisu. That's going to clean up the Tipo and the Hiram here. Plus, he can challenge into the Grandma, and this way, this keeps a lot of stuff in play for him, and he can maybe start questing very quickly. Though we do see the Be Prepared in Scott's hand that's going to be able to answer this, so we're going to see a lot of back and forth here over the next few turns.
Tipo going away when the Sisu was played.
Don't forget the Magic Broom went to the library and then got to draw 2 cards here because of playing another character. Got to banish the Magic Broom, draw the card off that, and the library as well. Edmund keeping his hand as flush as possible for the rest of this game. Scott's at 17, does have a few ways to get lore out of nowhere, but 17 is a number that Ed can maybe manage from here. He's not immediately going to lose to a Pirate's Life.
Also, Edmund insulating himself against something like a Be Prepared, knowing that he's going to be committing some big characters to the board with this library, that if Scott has to Be Prepared, we know he does.
Yeah, it looks like
the library stays around. Scott is going to go with that Be Prepared line, banishing all characters.
Yeah, you can see Scott wasn't super happy about using Be Prepared here, but what other line does he really have? You don't really want to put just a dragon into play. You don't want to put just a Tamatoa into play here, and you definitely don't want to play this Tipo just yet. You want that to be one of the turns where you play one of your big things. You get to play the Tipo and pass over to Edmund, so he has to well, he's thinking about it. Maybe he does want to play the Tipo here, but there are some things to be said about maybe choking down some of the ink from Edmund if you wait to play it later alongside another character.
Go back to Ed. Draw a card for turn. Start off with a rabbit. Draw another. See what we can find. Still has a handful of cards.
I mean, Ed might get through almost his entire deck this game.
Another library. This is going to be tough for Scott to answer. We know he's only playing one hideaway. He's only playing
at the bottom of his deck.
To the bottom of his deck. He's only playing 2 Mauis. You know, they can come in and rush. Of course, the Vitalisphere can be used to give a character rush. A third library. Oh my gosh. This might put Ed back into the game. If he can survive long enough, keep Scott off of game win.
I heard you like books, Brandon.
I think Ed likes books.
Who doesn't really? The books are great. Back over to Scott. You can see kind of a little frown on his face. This isn't working out the way he wants to. So here comes a dragon, or a Tamatoa, I apologize. It's going to get back a Popsicle. Popsicle's going to get a card deeper into the deck. Edmund, do you have a way to take care of this Tamatoa?
Yeah, you need to answer this Tamatoa with a number of items in play.
And he did draw another Tipo here, but this is what I was talking about last turn. So important that he has the Tipo left over in his hand because he's going to be able to play another Tipo here. So Lady Tremaine by itself is not an out. But as we know, Edmund has so many cards in his hand. And look, the body language from Edmund here, I believe he might have this wrapped up.
Has a way to get rid of the Tamatoa at least.
Yeah, 3 more lore for Edmund here. This game. Oh, he's moving quickly.
Questing with the rabbit. We're going to see the Be Prepared.
Be Prepared.
Yeah, Be Prepared comes down, getting rid of that Tamatoa.
Draw 2 more cards.
Going to draw cards. These libraries are going to stay in play. Likely get another 3 lore at the start of Ed's next turn.
I think we might be getting close to having a champion here, Brandon.
We might. Ed is getting very, very close. Of course, Ed would go up to 15 lore on the next turn, putting him dangerously close to 20. This would be a feat by Edmund coming back from the start that Scott had.
Yeah. How does Edmund progress here? It looks like a goat.
Oh, he has a goat. That's going to be another immediate lore.
That's going to put him up to 13 here, technically into 14.
Bouncing the goat back. That's another.
Yeah, I've got to believe Edmund's got this wrapped up next turn here. Over to Scott. He's got these 2 dragons. The goat was saved too. That's a big play by Edmund. He's making sure the goat doesn't get exposed here.
This is such a close game, Tannen. Next turn, Ed likely gets up to 17. If we have goat, bounce, goat, that'd pretty much be it.
Scott's going to hire him, draw a card here. I don't know what he can find to possibly keep him out of this.
Scott's looking for anything. We know the hideaway's at the bottom of the deck, so that's not going to be able to find that. Only finds Tamatoa, Dragon, and Brawl. That's not going to be particularly helpful. We're going to Ice Block and banish the snake to get Edmund off of any lore possible.
Edmund's ready to show a card. It's a bounce.
He has it. Edmund has found his way. He has gone the distance. He is the Disney Lorcana North American champion.
As the crowd goes nuts, sees the victory screen come up, Edmund Shue is your victor. What an amazing weekend here. What amazing play. Unbelievable from both of the players here. A lot of respect to Scott.